let's begin. Okay, I'm Tom Cool from Tom Cool Life channel, and today I'm with Bob. And Bob, what is your project name again?
I'm Bob Stewart.
Bob Stewart?
Yes.
And the project name?
Oh, it's EXOCHAIN.
EXOCHAIN, all right. So, I mean, most of our audience are like me, so they don't have any idea, about EXOCHAIN, and they want to really get to know it. And I mean, I think you have to explain it in a very simple term.
Okay.
Is that okay with you?
Absolutely,
okay,
love to.
Let's go.
Yeah, so EXOCHAIN is a ICO coming out, but it's over a year in development.
All right.
We have 26 full-time employees. We have 9 developers working on blockchain. We're a US-based company, and we're focused on creating a very horizontal solution to provide access to data and give people control over their data again. And in order to do that, the existing mechanisms are lacking a couple different majorly important aspects.
All right.
Number one is that in order to assert a level of control over your data, you must be able to enforce that control. Because if somebody does something bad with your information and you want to say, hey, listen, I did not give you permission to do that, you need to be able to go back and prove that you never gave permission to do it, and that must be enforceable in a court of law.
All right.
And in order to enforce that in a court of law, you have to have legal standing in that jurisdiction that you file a lawsuit.
Right.
And most of these systems today are designed that everybody comes in, they look at a click-wrap agreement, and then they go through the entire click-wrap agreement, they read it very thoroughly, and they determine what are their rights and conditions. No, they don't. They just click OK, and they zoom in.
Right.
And so you have this entire data economy that is very similar to the dirty energy industry that used to rape the ground by pulling coal out and burning it and not worrying about what goes into the atmosphere.
Okay.
And now you have clean energy that is using things like solar and wind, etc. What we're doing is creating a clean data economy where all of the data that transacts across a smart contract fabric has an additional layer on top of it that then governs the terms and conditions under which that data is allowed to be used. Mm-hmm. So it's not enough just to have a smart contract that technologically works, that input A gives you output B, but you also need to have the business terms and conditions under which that was agreed to.
Right.
And so in order to do that, we have to first know who is the person. So we created an identity scoring engine. It's very similar to a credit score, where in the U.S. anyway, everybody has TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian.
Right.
These are credit reporting agencies that calculate a score based on a series of algorithms. And depending on how much money you're trying to get or borrow, then they will change the algorithm to look further and further into your background to determine whether or not you can afford that loan. And so these credit scoring agencies have been around for a long time, and they have a monopoly on this dirty data. And in fact, it's ridiculous that they lose the data to the dark web and then charge you a fee to monitor your identity theft. Mm-hmm. So what we've done is created a mechanism that allows you to tie in all your different sources of self-sovereign identity, and then we connect a weight to those different sources. So go ahead and add Civic, go ahead and add in Google, go ahead and add in Twitter, go ahead and add in a Snapchat. And each of these things, when you can prove that you can log into any of these OAuth-based systems, add to your identity score. So now we have a very simple API that can be called by any company during a login process. Normally it's username, password, and then click submit. And if it's a bank, sometimes you now get an SMS with a unique PIN, and you air gap that in, and that's considered two-factor authentication. But in the case of a bank, that's not truly enforceable, because that is the bank authenticating their own customer. So what we're doing is providing a third-party adjudication of that user. So when this user puts in username and password and clicks submit, we go out and look at 125 different data sources and to determine, are you who you say you are? So I have a very deep background in this space. I used to be the Chief Technology Officer for Motorola. And then from Motorola, I was Chief Technology Officer for CMGI. We bought 80 different .coms. And from there, I ended up joining EMC Corporation, and became the CTO for global security solutions around identity and Orwellian data warehouse for U.S. military intelligence programs. So after that, we worked on biometric systems that can then utilize ultrasound to read beneath the skin and find a mapping of information and match that up as the private key to the public key, which is your fingerprint. So I did that from 2012 to 2014, and then now we've built this entire system that provides the blockchain solution set for all biometrics. One of the greatest biometrics in people is their medical records. So we are utilizing this score to say, is this Bob Stewart? And if so, can Bob Stewart get control of his medical records? And so we have a smart contract that provides the legal framework that gives Bob Stewart the legal rights to take and seize control of all of his medical records, because there is no better biometric than your medical record.
Right.
Because your medical record oftentimes literally contains your own DNA. And your DNA plus your medical records, what the doctor writes down for you, combined together is the best record of who you are. It is literally the metrics about your biology. That is true biometrics. And it is changing over time, so that therefore this creates a mechanism for creating a revocable identity. And it gives you the control to take your own medical record and make sure that you can make it available to your children and your great-grandchildren and your great-great-grandchildren. Why is this important? It's important because you can take no credit for the color of your skin, the color of your eyes, the color of your hair. Those were given to you by your parents, and they were given by their parents. But the future of medicine for your great-grandchildren will be artificial intelligence-driven gene editing. So if your great-grandson gets cancer, where did it come from? It may have come from your great-grandson was exposed, or it may be because you were exposed to a toxin when you were a child. So these breaks must be able, in order for the artificial intelligence to find those solutions, it has to have a mechanism for utilizing your genetic information and your medical records in order to target the solution set. Now, in order to do that, you must have a mechanism that allows the AI to have legal rights to look at that information. And because it's your information, if they're able to create a cure from it, your family should be able to benefit from it. And so this allows us to put terms and conditions into each of these transitions over time to ensure that the patients and the people get the benefits from their data. This has been a very phenomenally exciting project. We have many different customers. The largest social media network in the world, the largest operating system company in the world, are all expressing great deals of interest in what we have developed, because right now it's a very hot topic about having and taking control of your data and having the legal rights to be able to take that data back if somebody misuses your data. That's called a legal bailment. It's a very powerful set of laws under the common law construct, and we're baking that into the legal fabric smart contract that sits and goes along with a traditional smart contract. And today we're developing this in the Ethereum network and on Hyperledger Fabric, and we're looking at other platforms like many of the ones that are near and dear to our hearts, like what's going on with EOS, and what's going on with Dragon Chain, and what's going on with all of these other tool sets. And we're developing libraries that will enable developers to very easily integrate these APIs.
All right. I mean, thank you, first of all, for the long explanation. But I'm not sure if I really followed you, actually. So what I think is that, your blockchain project will actually, really clarify the identity of the, data holder, the owner.
And where do they have legal standing? So that if there's a problem with a transaction on a smart contract, that they can enforce the terms and conditions in the court of law.
All right.
Because I may be working with another American, or I may be working with a Korean, and in that case, it would be a different set of rules, and you would have to seek enforcement in Korean courts, not in American courts.
All right.
Right?
And
in a decentralized world.
What is the application area of this project?
It's really anywhere there's a smart contract. Anywhere there's a smart contract and that there are business terms and conditions governing the transaction that the smart contract is being used on.
But in this case, transaction refers more to like not token transaction, but data transactions.
Yes, data transactions, correct.
Yeah.
Our fabric is driven by our EXO token, and our protocol that we've created is called the Link Protocol.
All right.
And we are selling tokens into the marketplace, and we have already 1.1 million users of our technology for logging in. These are all doctors and nurses doing clinical research today.
Okay, so is the application only medical or?
No, it's not. That's just the area where it's very important to me personally, because I lost my youngest brother to cancer when he was 9 years old and I was 12. So I want to ensure that the work that we're doing can help to make medical research faster and safer, and also to provide the value of that medical research to the people that provide the data, the patients.
I mean, can you give me an example of how this medical research will benefit from your project?
Absolutely. So in medical research today, only 4 out of 100 people ever even participate in medical research. Of those 4 people, 80% of their data will be thrown away because only 20% of the sites are high-performing clinical research sites. So we are utilizing our engine to map what constitutes who is the best doctors and what scores do they have around their accreditation. So doctors are required to take regular annual training, professional education and training records. We use those to score who is the best doctors. Okay. And then we score which are the best clinical research sites. And if we can move from right now, today it's only 20 sites, by recording the best on the blockchain, then we will have made a 100% improvement in clinical research. That is a big number. That is a multi-trillion-dollar industry.
So the scoring system, that's also on the blockchain?
Yes, the scoring system is also on the blockchain. We use the same identity engine that we have created to create what we call the DYNAC score, which is dynamic accreditation. It utilizes the same technology, just applied to accreditation of clinical research sites, as opposed to accreditation of you as an individual.
What's the difference between accreditation for clinical research centers and individual?
Your question again?
You have 2 processes, right? One accreditation process for the clinical research centers,
yes,
and one for individuals, right?
Correct.
So it must be different.
Well, it's really boils down to who is the attestor and what are they attesting to. In the case of Civic, or maybe attesting to, did you pass KYC, AML, and are you accredited investor? So this is identity information about you. And in the case of clinical research, it might say, do you take care of your patients? Do your patients stay in your clinical trial? What percentage of them drop out of your clinical trial? So the person who is reporting that information, we must know who that individual is, and they must have a good track record of always telling the truth in this manner. So it utilizes the same mechanism, but creates 2 different scores.
Okay. I think I got the picture. So it actually all starts from the individual then.
It does. Everything goes back to the individual. You have to know who is involved. So in some ways, it flies in the face of traditional views of decentralized networks where people want to remain anonymous. This is not that at all. Oh, this is for conducting legal transactions and improving processes. Many systems look at this type of information and call it audit information. And audit always has a very negative connotation, right? Like, I'm being audited. Yeah. Oh no, right? I think with this system, it becomes more about merit and meritocracy, and me being able to say, I can prove I was on the winning team that developed this drug for Novartis, right? Or I developed this drug for this other drug company, or I developed this product. And so today, the reason many of these sites are poor performing is because the site selection is often done based on, it's Dr. So-and-so, and not on who is really doing the work. So if we can have a system that records the people and knows who they are and what they did that was positive and how they contributed their data and their work and their effort, then we now have a system that creates great merit.
But what about, I mean, when you accredit a clinical research center, I mean, you most probably have to contact, actually the testees who are tested, by the clinical research center.
Correct.
I mean, how do you do that? Because that's privacy.
Well, that's the entire point of what we have developed is this now enables that patient to agree to share their information for the limited purpose of accrediting of that site. And if anybody tries to use that information for any other purpose, then there is a penalty that can be directly ascribed for violating that patient's privacy.
Right.
Yes.
And I mean, isn't that usually what lawyers do?
It is, and that's really what lawyers will still need to do. So that we do not get rid of the lawyers. What we are doing is providing the mechanism for the legal enforcement of the agreements under which the clinical research is being conducted, or the banking transaction is being conducted, or the insurance transaction is being conducted. These are all industries that we're working in today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit complicated, but I think I kind of get the big picture of the what your project is aiming to do. And so you mentioned about social media, you mentioned about credit score, you mentioned about medical records. So all these information is to credit actually the individual, right? Whether he's really the person who claims he's to be, right?
That's correct. All of these things over time, longitudinally, will further reinforce that I am working with the correct individual. And in the case of insurance, there's much fraud. So this, as the score improves over time, now the insurance companies don't have to look at people that are connected with our system. They just can pay those claims, and they can focus their energies on other areas where fraud is taking place.
Okay, so then social media, medical records, and what was the other thing? Credit scores. I mean, these kind of how can I put it? Assessment criteria. They are applying differently per situations. Am I right?
That's correct. Yes, absolutely, they are. And we've got a very flexible.
For instance, social media. When is it needed?
Every time you upload a photo, it should be the copyright for a photo does not automatically get transferred unless you agree to that. And most people don't know that when they first signed up for the account, buried way down in the end user license agreement was a term that said anything you upload to our service we own. And the reality is, if you took the photo, you own the copyright to that. And copyright is not just one thing, it's 5 different things. It's the right to modify, it's the right to distribute, it's the right to create derivative works, it's the right to perform. And, these rights are yours, and you should be able to control and limit how they're going to be used. It's okay to use my photo for showing it to my friends, but it's not okay to make composite videos and then automatically circulate them to my friends, right? So these are specific rights that we have created a mobile app that will allow the end user to turn those rights on and off for every data object they have in their inventory.
Okay, so back to the legal enforcement.
Yes.
So actually the user can choose the terms and conditions?
Yeah, that's where we see this going. We're not there today. We have to crawl, and then we walk, and then we jog, then we run, then we sprint, then we jump, right? But right now we're at walking stage, so we already have 1.1 million users. They're already using the system to take control of their medical records, and they're using it to limit the rights. And in other words, it's okay for you to look at my medical records to make a diagnosis for this one visit, but you do not have the rights to share my data, de-anonymize it, and then share it with others for other medical research purposes without asking my permission.
I mean,
first.
how do you adjust? How do you kind of resolve the conflict which could happen between actually the user's point of view regarding the legal enforcement and actually the real law regarding the legal enforcement? You understand what I'm saying? Because there could be, for a medical record or some other information, there could be already a set of laws existing, right? And in the case, the user kind of argues that I don't want this, but actually according to law, it's not a breach.
Well, it depends on, there are certainly, everything is under a body of law. So there is an educational aspect to this. So luckily, because we're starting off very simple, we can pull in, and we have full-time legal staff on site working for EXOCHAIN. We have full-time medical professional doctors on site. We have full-time certified public accountants working on site. So we are analyzing things like the end user license agreements for Facebook, the end user license agreement for Twitter, the end user license agreement for Google. And whenever a person ties in one of those sources into their adjudication, we're able to identify and tell them, because the Facebook license applies to all Facebook users. What are the things that are okay, what are the things that are not so good, and what are the things that are really bad. And then we can then provide that end user options. Maybe you don't want to use Facebook Messenger. Maybe you should use Telegram. And if you get rid of Facebook Messenger and take it off of your identity and add Telegram onto your identity, your score will go up. Why? Because that is an organization that respects people's privacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. And
so we think that with literally hundreds of millions of patients, we will gain significant muscle and lobbying and be able to start changing some of the laws. But it will take a long time to do. But for today, we are addressing very simple use cases around ensuring transgenerational access to medical records and the sharing of that data in an anonymized and de-anonymized way in order to find more cures for more patients.
All right. But I mean, that's the thing I don't understand, because if you just concentrate on medical industry, then it totally makes sense. But if your a platform has actually more utility, for instance like insurance companies or banks, I mean those are totally different industries, and I don't see how it can be applicable to actually to other industries.
Because we've actually already been approached by the insurance industry. We told them what we were doing on the medical side, and they said, "Wow, okay. Well, we need to accelerate claims adjudication. Right now, they need to say, okay, did this person see this doctor, get this diagnosis, receive this prescription, and should we pay money to all of the parties that were involved?" And right now, that is a very manual process for them. And this provides an automated way where they can simply explore the blockchain and say, okay, this person had the very high identity score, the terms and conditions under which their information was shared with that physician was countersigned by the physician. The physician used the same system, and so the physician had an identity score. The terms and conditions with the pharmaceutical company that provided the drug were known. All of this is recorded, and so it's okay to pay that claim. So even though it sounds like it's just medical, it is actually banking, insurance, and medical.
Mm-hmm. All right, understood. So I think, because there are many, not similar, but, there are platforms that are really concentrating on KYC or identification, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But the biggest difference will be most probably that, there actually doesn't have this legal enforcement feature in it.
Well, that, and
also the KYC process is different. The identification process is different from yours, right?
Correct. We think that there's going to continue to be many solutions in the area of identity. There's going to be multiple types of biometrics. Could be fingerprint, could be facial, could be lots of different things. We just are tying them all together and calculating a score. Right? There's not too many credit reporting agencies. There's very few mechanism called FICO from Fair Isaac Corporation, which calculates the credit score. So really, we're looking at creating a fabric that can grow over time as all of these other companies like Civic and others continue to become more and more successful. The end user owns that data. So they should just simply be able to tie that in under terms and conditions and have their score go up.
All right. So just to summarize it, so for banking, yes, it will be credit scoring. And for medical, it will be identification scoring and research, clinical research center, scoring.
We do not have any intention of getting into credit scoring. We just have intention of getting into identity scoring.
Okay. So for banks,
banking customers, because they do have KYC requirements, right? So there's a threshold at what constitutes KYC.
Right.
We already have, as I said, 1.1 million users of this network. 400,000 of these users are accreditable doctors. You know, they have very high net worth, they receive a lot of pay, and they could all be investing in crypto. And in fact, they will be, because we're taking 300 million of our tokens and we're creating 1.1 million wallets just to get started, and we're staking all of those wallets with our tokens.
Right.
We're doing this in order for these doctors to incentivize them, to incentivize the 50,000 organizations that they work for to adopt our protocol for identity management and login adjudication across the board.
Right.
So many different organizations will look at it from the perspective of that when every time that doctor logs into whatever medical record system he has to maintain, a recording of the terms and conditions under which that doctor is logging in is re-recorded and is now enforceable. This allows us to then address, and we have already done this, many different blockchain companies that are building solutions around healthcare and in banking and insurance, and say, listen, you can tie your system into ours very simply. Just change out your identity side, and now you have access to these 1.1 million users.
Okay, so is your target initially the United States, or are you targeting globally?
Well, that's a great question. So we are targeting globally ultimately. Right now, we're very focused on the United States, but I would say it's actually all of the Americas. So we have a 7-tranche ICO, which is 1 billion tokens per year for the next 7 years, with the intentions of entering into the Americas, which will give us the melting pot of America, plus a very large access to the Hispanic genome of Latin and South America and the Caribbean. And then next year we will enter into Asia, and the year after that we'll enter into Africa, and the year after that we'll enter into the Middle East, and the year after that we'll enter into Europe, and then the year after that we'll enter into the rest of the world. So the intention here is to have 300 million tokens per year to invest into the economies of their medical professionals, right? And the reason we go after them, stay with this medical side, is because everybody is a patient. Not everybody has a bank account. Not everybody has insurance, but everybody at some point goes and sees their doctor. So this gives us an opportunity to have a face-to-face adjudication of that patient by the doctor, who says, I looked at this person. And when a doctor does that, you know, their score can go up. So it doesn't necessarily require the same amount of information that KYC requires in America. You know, in Africa, it's a very different tribal type of knowing who these people are.